Was it similar to a beach
Yeah,
that we would see in the Caribbean or something like
yes,
that?
yes, very much so,
But so much more
but
brilliant, like you
not.
said, but
Yes,
not.
similar but not.
Will there be lakes and oceans, and will we enjoy them in a similar way in the life to come? Many near death experiencers say yes. You know, Marv Besteman, the bank president I was telling you about, again, bank presidents don't typically make up wild stories of visiting heaven. They don't need to. They're not even like that, right? And yet Marv says when he coded in the hospital, these angels take him to heaven, and there he sees a lake and even boats on the lake, which personally made me excited. Here's what Marv says. About 60 yards away, in the middle left of the panorama before me, were some old fishing boats pulled up on the shore of a huge rippling lake. The boats looked worn and aged, not sleek and razzy-dazzy like the boats we see zooming around on Lake Michigan, where he lived. They lay on a sandy, rocky seashore. The blue of the lake was a darker, less brilliant blue than the shade of heaven's sky, and the surface had a few gentle waves. Like an ocean or one of the Great Lakes, I couldn't see the other side. All right, was this just like a Great Lake or an ocean? Not sure. But what's fascinating is Rebecca Springer, the near death experiencer from the 1890s, and again, before near death experiencers were known, not only describes the exquisite beauty of this lake nestled in the hills of heaven, but she describes seeing people enjoying and playing on the lakes on boats propelled by some unseen force. She's describing what we would describe like motorboats, but in an age when that wasn't even known. Listen to how she describes people enjoying heaven's lakes in old ways, but also in new ways. Rebecca says this. Before us spread a lake as smooth as glass, but flooded with a golden glory caught from the heavens that made it look like a sea of molten gold. The blossom and fruit-bearing trees grew down to the very border in many places. And far, far away across its shining waters arose the domes and spires of what seemed to be a mighty city. Many people were resting on its flowery banks, and on the surface of the water were boats of wonderful structure, filled with happy souls and propelled by some unseen power. Little children as well as grown persons were floating upon or swimming in the water. And this is wild, because she describes boats propelled along by some unseen power, hopefully not gasoline, all right? I'm hoping we won't be smelling that in heaven. I'm sure there's other technologies there. But they're enjoying nature and even a lake just like we would here. And why wouldn't they? Because, God is the creator of all we love and enjoy and the beauty of nature he created. And nature's beauty is going to be there. But we're also going to experience it in dimensions beyond what we've experienced here. Rebecca was not only surprised to find that she could stay underwater for a very long time, because of course, we don't have to breathe in heaven. We're not dependent on lungs and air because it's the life and light of God flowing through everything that gives it life. She could also find she could communicate underwater and also experienced other things that other near-death experiencers have also told me. Listen, May led me down to the water, down, down, into its crystal depths. And when it seemed to me we must be hundreds of feet beneath the surface, she threw herself prostrate and bade me do the same. I did so, and immediately we began to slowly rise. Presently, I found that we no longer rose, but were slowly floating in mid-current, many feet still beneath the surface. Then appeared to me a marvel. Look where I would, perfect prismatic rays surrounded me. I seemed to be resting in the very heart of a prism, and such vivid yet delicate coloring mortal eyes never rested upon. Instead of the 7 colors as we see them here, the colors blended in such rare graduation of shades as to make the rays seem almost infinite. as I lay watching this marvelous panorama, for the colors deepened and faded like the lights of the aurora borealis. I was attracted by the sound of distant music. I whispered, "Tell me, May." "Yes, dear, I will. The waters of this lake catch the light in a most marvelous manner, as you've seen. A wiser head than mine must tell you why. They also transmit musical sounds, only musical sounds, for a great distance." The song was evidently from the distant shore of the lake. Now, think about how much fun and how wonderful God is, what he has in store for us. I remember so many wonderful days out on Lake Travis here in Austin. When my kids were young, we would go sailing or go out to an island. We'd go jumping off cliffs, swimming and diving, and just laughing and hearing music. And just imagine this great reunion. We meet again, but there we enjoy God's lakes and new wonders and experiences above the water and under the water, things that we have never imagined. Well, what about the ocean? What about beaches? Because I love the ocean too, And some people love mountains or fall forests, but I'll tell you, my choice vacation is Santa Barbara. My wife, Kathy, and I lived there for 7 years, and I think it's one of the most beautiful places on earth. It's mountains, 4,000-foot mountains cascading down to meet the yellow sand beach and crystal clear waters, a little cold. But if you wear a wetsuit, you can surf the energy of these waves. You can go scuba diving in the kelp beds and see life forms. So are we going to enjoy oceans like that? Well, some theologians will say, no, sorry, no oceans in heaven. So probably no beach, no waves, none of that. Now, why would they say that? Well, John, remember, who wrote the book of Revelation, was imprisoned on an island in the Mediterranean, island of Patmos. So the sea was the walls of his prison. And John writes this in the book of Revelation: "Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and there was no longer any sea." Okay, now, first question is John making a global statement? There will not be any sea or any ocean in heaven. Is he making that statement like a fact? Or is he noticing that there was no sea, there was no prison any longer? Is he noticing what, is not there because for so long it had imprisoned him? That's what he says. There was no longer any sea. It's an observation. But he also says he's describing the new heaven and the new earth. So he's not even describing the intermediate heaven, which is what near-death experiencers are describing. If you don't know what I'm talking about, the Bible talks about how there's an intermediate heaven and earth that are separate, but one day God's going to rejoin them, a new heaven and a new earth joined. But I don't think the Bible is declaring that there will definitely be no sea, no ocean life, no oceans at all. And I don't think it contradicts what many near-death experiencers describe. Debbie Ali is someone I just met. She has an incredible story. She was living on the island of Trinidad and was kidnapped and held for ransom for almost 2 weeks. And they tortured her literally to the point of death. After 10 or so days of this horrific living in captivity, her body gave out. Listen to how Debbie describes where Jesus took her in heaven.
Literally in the blink of an eye, I was above my body. People say the math is not mathing. Not mathing. So I went down and I looked at my chest. There's no sign, no movement on my chest. And I really looked for, a couple of minutes. I had never felt more alive, more vibrant, more energetic, more myself. I had never felt more myself than then. Yeah, before I could even process that, there comes Jesus stepping out of the white light. This is white, brilliant light, like I'd never seen. And I was able to look directly into that light and not, I know, no need to squint or, I'm just looking in this brilliance, and there was an instant knowing. Everything about him emanates love. So it's just, whether it's the pinky toe or the big toe, it's just knowing that you're in his presence. And I mean, before I could even just settle in, just to remain there, he lifted me up to standing position, and he said, child, you've been through enough. You're tired. You're exhausted. You can rest now. And there were no sweeter words for me at that point than to hear that. And he cradled me as an adult. He cradled me just like this, like a newborn baby. He snuggled me, and I slept. Man, John, that was sleep. When I woke up, I was over his shoulder, just like a toddler was, on the beach of heaven. I'm sure there were more than one, but that particular one, I was on that beach. So I was looking over his shoulder, just like a toddler would, in wonderment. It's like taking a 3-year-old to Disneyland for the first time, and they're like, everything was amplified a gazillion trillion times, even though I know that's not a thing. But it was just, everything was alive.
What were you seeing? What did it look like?
I saw, a length of beach that we had walked. Clearly, he had walked by, but there were no footprints. And, there was no need for speech. Everything was, I thought it, he responded. Or he responded and I asked a question. And it was not as though I was incapable of speaking. There's a choice, but there really was no need to. And I questioned, there should be footprints, because it's sand.
And you were living in Trinidad at the time, which is
yes,
beaches in the Caribbean, right?
I grew up around the beaches everywhere, right? So it was always one of my favorite places. He said, Debbie, you don't see footprints because you're not supposed to go back. And I'm like, He put me down on the sand. He knew what I was thinking. I know he knew what I was thinking. But he did not respond at the time. And I reveled in that sand. There was a blue in that ocean, different shades of blue. As crazy as this sounds, and I am no artist, trust me, I mixed every paint color I could find to, in an attempt to replicate at least one shade of the blue. Cannot find it. It does not exist in this realm, in this world. Beautiful. And I remember the line on the horizon, just one dead straight line. And everything was so amplified that it was blowing my mind. Every little thing blew my mind. I've seen the horizon, I mean, how many times? But that horizon was just, there was a glow kind of emanating from the horizon. And the water was just like an ocean, filled with fish, different kinds of aquatic life and all of that. And the life, whatever, crabs, fish, whatever, they were moving and doing their thing.
You knew that, or you saw that, or?
I saw that, and I knew that. So even my vision was like, I was able to see that far into the waters where I could see the outlines of the different types of fish and the colors and even the skeleton, if I looked closely enough. And I could see them moving around and they're just kind of doing whatever. And I'm like, wow, that's cool. I didn't know we had those here. I'm thinking these things. And I saw the life in the ocean, but the water itself was alive. The ocean water itself was a living, breathing thing. It's almost as though there was a heartbeat in the ocean.
Interesting.
But not one you could hear, but you could sense.
So there was a life to even the water, the
In the
ocean, or the
water.
sea.
And I'll tell you how I realized that as well, because that was my initial thought when I viewed the ocean as it was. But then as Jesus walked, maybe 2 or 3 steps along the shoreline, where the water laps onto the sand, the water would stop moving. There was no movement. So same way that the horizon was a dead straight line, the water where it encroaches on the sand became a dead straight line,
But only where he was walking.
only where he walked.
So were there waves? Was there movement
No,
of
yes,
like an ocean?
like an ocean, there's no, normal waves, no crashing waves, but there is, the gentle ripple of the water, because that's the nature. That's nature, right? There's
Yeah.
movement in the water, so there will be, if the fish move, there will be movement. If there's wind, which there was a gentle breeze, it will move the water and cause the ripples and all of that. So all of that was natural.
And so was it similar to a beach
Yeah.
that we would see in the Caribbean or something like
Yes.
that?
Yes. Very much so.
But so much more
But
brilliant, like you,
not.
but
Yes.
not.
Similar, but not. Um, so the fish stopped moving. I saw the fish stop moving
As Jesus was passing.
as he passed by.
What do
And
you
the
think that was
water
about?
stopped. Well, the Lord, that's what he told me was everything must stand still in my presence.
Wow.
And it suddenly made sense. Like, oh,
Kind
and
of like
then
all nature, all
all
creation bows
nature,
down before him.
everything must pay honor to his presence wherever he is.
Wow.
And when I was in San Diego, we went to the beach. So the very first thing I wanted to do was go wiggle my toes in the sand and just for it. And I wiggled and I wiggled and I was like, oh man, I wish I was back home. This
In
sand
heaven,
sucks. Yes.
back home in heaven.
Because that sand sucks. I mean, don't get me wrong, California is beautiful, nice sand and all that, but it sucks compared to when you've seen that. Come on.
Really?
What do you want to
What
do with
was
a
the
beach?
what was it about the sand?
Each grain of sand was a crystal. And I mean a uniquely shaped and formed crystal stone. But it was not hard on my feet because crystal by its very nature is, it
Hmm.
doesn't hard exterior. It was not tough on my feet. It felt like a sponge. But
Uh,
yet when I held, like a little bit of sand in my fingers, they were crystals.
mm.
And I could have marveled at each one. I could have marveled at each one like for all eternity. But let me tell you about the light, because it suddenly occurred to me, wait a minute, where's all this light coming from? But there's no sun. And it was fun, and I could tell Jesus was giggling. I knew he was like giggling in his mind, like she's looking at the sky
Jesus
now.
was giggling.
Oh yeah, he does. He has a sense of humor. He does. He said there's no sun because there's no need for the sun. Why do we need the sun when the light of God shines on everything around you?
Hmm.
And there's no sky. So what I was looking at, and I saw no clouds and nothing. I mean, there were birds and all of that, but there were no clouds. And he said, we don't need a sky and we don't need a sun. Why do we need a sky when God's love is limitless and you are limitless? You can move as freely and as quickly as you desire.
Hmm.
There's nothing, and I suddenly realized there were trees. The color, the greens of those trees, but John, I mean, again, I cannot replicate. I can't find it, right?
Hmm.
But I looked at the leaves, and there was no shadow under the leaves. I looked at the rocks. There was no shadow all around the rocks.
Hmm.
It was just light everywhere. But the life in the tree was alive as well. That it was almost as though the leaves and the branches and even the rocks, everything emanated this light. And everything almost had its own pulse.
So life, you mean of a different kind in
Yes.
heaven, even in the trees and the
Yes.
ocean and
Yeah. Everything was a living, breathing organism almost.
wow.
All of these, the trees that aquatic life, everything, it was getting its life force from the light of God.
Mm-hmm.
Until finally Jesus asked me, he said, you really want to go back and be with your kids? And I said, yes. But I could have remained there and be totally at peace, never wanting to return to this earth. I really didn't. But there was the call, my babies.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I hope imagining heaven today has motivated you just to be like the heroes of faith, who live this life and are even willing to go through the hardship and the difficulties and being faithful to God more and more, knowing that you won't miss anything here, but what's to come is so much better. And I hope as well that imagining heaven today motivates you to live in gratitude and praise right now for all the beauty and the wonders you experience that God's given you in this life. You know, this week, just go out and notice beauty. Notice the little intricacies of nature. Just enjoy nature with friends, biking or taking a walk. But as you do, connect the dots. Marvel at the beauty of the Creator. Thank Him for being able to enjoy, this beauty that He's given you, or the enjoyment of His creation. Because when you do that, not only does it honor God, not only does God enjoy you enjoying what He's given you as a gift, but it'll turbocharge your enjoyment of life and even the depth of your experience of all the beauty of life. Well, I hope you have enjoyed this podcast. I've enjoyed doing it because I just love thinking about it. Like I said, I love nature. But if you have enjoyed this, then I hope you'll subscribe so you'll get notifications of when new episodes come out. Please, hit the like and ring the bell, because Mr. AI, who runs Planet Earth now, that'll let him know to send this to other people who need to hear about it. And share this with your friends and family and loved ones who need to know of the goodness of God and all that's awaiting us. Till next time, be blessed.